Welcome to this emotional documentary style story. This is the story of an American woman whose marriage looked perfect from the outside, but behind closed doors, her life became a prison. She was controlled, isolated, and broken down by the man who promised to protect her. But one day, she escaped, and after losing everything, she found an unexpected ally, a powerful billionaire who helped her stand again. What followed was not cruel revenge, it was something stronger: truth, justice, and dignity. And a lesson her husband never saw coming: the house that looked perfect. In Charleston, South Carolina, people admired the home on Willow Crest Drive. It was large, elegant, and perfectly maintained. White stone walls, tall windows, a long curved driveway, fresh flowers by the entrance. At night, warm golden light shined through the glass like a picture from a luxury magazine. It looked like the home of a happy couple, and on paper it was. Inside that house lived Camille Roman and her husband, Gavin Roman. To neighbors, Gavin looked like a polished, successful man. He was respected in business circles, smooth in public, and generous enough in front of others to seem admirable. He owned a growing construction company, dressed well, and knew how to speak with confidence. He could make her own believe almost anything. Camille, his wife, looked graceful beside him. She was 31, intelligent, soft-spoken, and naturally warm. Before marriage, she had worked as an interior designer with a strong eye for detail and color. She loved quiet cafes, old bookstores, and Sunday morning with music in the background. She had once imagined a peaceful life built on trust and teamwork. But the marriage she entered was not peace. It was control, wearing expensive clothes. At first, Gavin did not seem cruel. He seemed attentive. He wanted to know where she was, who she spoke to, and what she spent. When she would return home, Camille thought it was concern. Then it became pressure, then rules, then silence, and then fear. Over the years, Gavin slowly cut her off from almost everything that gave her strength. He criticized her friends until she stopped seeing them. He said her family was dramatic and unhealthy, so visits become rare. He told her work distracted her from being a proper wife, so she left her design projects behind. He handled all finances, her phone, and said trust required transparency. He watched her expressions and accused her of disrespect if she looked unhappy in public. He never needed loud choice of all the time. His favorite tool was control. He would smile in front of guests and then punish her later with cold silence, threats, or locked doors. If she embarrassed him in the smallest way, that was the part no one saw. Because Gavin did not look dangerous, he looked successful, and many people confused those two things. The slow disappearance of Camille. Camille did not notice how much of herself she had lost until one quiet evening in late October. Rain touched the upstairs windows. The house was still. Gavin was away at a dinner with investors. Camille stood in the master bathroom, looked into the mirror, and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her face was still beautiful but tired. Her smile had become careful. Her eyes looked like someone who was always listening for footsteps. She touched the sink and tried to remember the last day she felt fully free. The answer did not come. That frightened her. Yes, earlier Camille had been full of color. She wore bright dresses, laughed easily, and filled sketchbooks with design ideas. She loved working with fabrics, rooms, texture, and light. She believed that beauty could help people heal. She once planned to open a studio of her own. Now she asked permission to leave the house, and even then, sometimes Gavin said no. He did not always use the word no directly. He was smarter than that. He would say, I do not think that is a good idea, or you know how people talk, or after all I do for you, I expect better judgment. Camille had learned that defying those sentences came with consequences: a locked bedroom door, a removed credit card, a disabled phone, a week of being ignored like furniture, or worse. A soft threat spoken too calmly, it felt more dangerous than dealing. Do not make me regret trusting you, just was Gavin's favorite lie. The truth was that he did not trust anyone because he saw other people as things to manage, even his wife, especially his wife. 1 month before that rainy evening, Camille had tried to reconnect with an old college friend named Nolly Mercer. They met for lunch in secret after Gavin left town for a meeting. For 90 minutes, Camille felt alive again. She laughed, she talked about design, she listened to stories about normal life outside Willow Crest Drive. Nolly noticed her sadness immediately, but she did not push too hard. She simply said, "If you ever need me, call me any hour." Camille nearly cried right there at the table, but Gavin found the restaurant receipt in her coat pocket that night. He said very little at first. That was always worse. Then he took her phone, locked her in the upstairs guest room for 2 days, and told the house staff she was ill and needed rest. Camille sat in that room by the window and understood something clearly. She was not in a marriage, she was in captivity dressed as marriage. When Gavin finally let her out, he kissed her forehead and said, "You force me to do unpleasant things when you make foolish choices." Camille said nothing, but inside something changed. Fear was still there, yet under it a quick flame had appeared. It was the beginning of refusal. The night she understood the full truth. Every prison has a moment when the prisoner sees the walls completely. For Camille, that moment came in winter. Gavin hosted a private holiday gathering at the house. Business partners, their wives, local officials, and one magazine editor attended. The dining room looked beautiful. Camille arranged the floors herself because she could not bear watching hired designers to do it badly. Candlelight reflected across polished glass. Music played softly. Guests praised the house. They praised Gavin. They praised the marriage. Camille smiled very quiet. She poured wine. She moved gracefully. She said all the right things. Halfway through the evening, one guest, a woman named Vivian Hart, admired the dining room and asked, "Camille, do you still design professionally?" Camille opened her mouth to answer, but Gavin replied for her. She used to. Now she enjoys a quieter life. Several people smiled politely. Camille felt heat rise in her face. Vivian laughed softly and said, "That is a shame. A woman with her eyes should be creating." Gavin's smile did not break, but Camille knew that look. It was warning. The dinner ended after midnight. The last car left the driveway. The front doors closed. The house fell silent. Gavin stood in the foyer, removing his cufflinks with slow, controlled movements. Then he turned to Camille. "You embarrassed me tonight." She looked at him with belief. "I barely spoke, that was the problem. Your face spoke. I did nothing wrong." He stepped closer. "Do not tell me what I saw." She backed up slightly. He continued in that same cold voice. "You looked ungrateful. You looked defiant. You looked like a woman forgetting who made her life comfortable." Comfortable. That would hit her like something bitter, because there was no comfort in fear. There was only decorating suffering. Camille said quietly, "You do not own me." The silence that followed felt dangerous. Gavin stared at her for a long moment, almost as if he were deciding what version of himself to use next. Then he smiled. That smile frightened her most of all. He took her by the arm, not violently, but firmly enough to remove ties, and led her upstairs, down the hall, past the guest room, to a storage room she rarely entered. He unlocked the door, pushed it open, and mentioned inside. The room was narrow, windowless, and partially empty except for storage shelves, a chair, and old boxes. Camille turned to him in shock. "What is this? A place for you to think?" Her chest tightened. "Gavin, You clearly need to remember boundaries. Do not do this. He leaned slightly closer and said, then next time behave like a wife instead of warning sign. He stepped back, took her phone from her hand and closed the door. The lock turned. Camille stood frozen in darkness except for the thin line of light under the door. For the first hour, she knocked and called out. No answer. By morning, a glass of water and a small tray appeared inside after the door opened just enough for house employees to slide them in without eye contact. Humiliation burned through her, not only because she was trapped, because someone else knew, and still no one helped. She remained there for nearly 2 days, and in those 2 days, Camille stopped hoping Gavin would change. Instead, she began planning to leave him, the escape. Camille understood that escaping Gavin would require patience, not emotion. He monitored emotions, he underestimated planning. So when he finally let her out and resumed his usual polished routine, she did something Gavin did not expect. She acted calm, she apologized softly, she avoided argument, she returned to silence. To him, this looked like surrender. To Camille, it was strategy. She began observing every practical detail in the house. Which drawer held spare keys, when the kitchen staff changed shifts, when security camera in the side hall had delayed blind spot during nightly rest, where Gavin kept petty cash for household errands, when he drank too much with clients and slept heavily. She also found something else. In one locked office drawer, she discovered records of financial transfers and property titles that included assets hidden under shell companies. One file suggested Gavin had manipulated signatures connected to a jointly owned property originally purchased with money from Camille's late father's estate. Her hands shook as she read it. He had not only controlled her life, he had likely stolen from her future. That knowledge changed everything. This was no longer only emotional survival, this was a legal truth. Camille photographed what she could using an old tablet Gavin forgot still had camera access. Then she hid the device inside the lining of a rarely used garment bag in the back of a closet. Days later, Gavin left for an overnight trip to Swana. Camille knew this might be her only clean chance. At 11:40 p.m., after the staff quarters went dark, she took Crash, the hidden tablet, one small bag of the clothes, and the spare side gate key. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might expose her before her footsteps did. She moved through the service hallway, paused, waited for the camera reset, crossed the blind spot, unlocked the gate, and stepped out into cold night air that felt almost unreal against her face. For 1 second, she wanted to cry, not from sadness, from the shock of open space. Then she kept moving. She walked 3 blocks before calling the only person she trusted, Neoli. Neoli answered on the second ring. Wise think with sleep. Camille could barely get the words out. I left. Neoli was instantly awake. Where are you? Camille gave the street's name. Stay exactly there, Neoli said. I'm coming. 20 minutes later, Neoli pulled up in a dark sedan and got out before the car fully stopped. She hugged Camille so tightly that Camille finally broke down. Not loudly, just deep, shaking tears from a woman who had been holding fear for too long. Neoli drove her to a small apartment across town owned by her cousin, a travel nurse, away on contract. It was safe, furnished, and anonymous enough to buy time. For the first time in the years, Camille slept without listening for Gavin's footsteps. The billionaire she never expected the next week were difficult, but they were honest. Camille contacted a lawyer through Neoli's recommendation. The lawyer's name was Grant Holloway, a calm, a meticulous man in his 50s who had helped women in high control divorce cases before. He listened carefully, reviewed the financial image from the tablet, and said something that gave Camille her first taste of hope. This man is not only cruel, he may also be vulnerable. Camille did not smile, but she felt a shift inside. Grant arranged a protecting feeling, emergency separation steps, and digital safety precautions. He also advised Camille to stay out of sight while evidence was properly organized. That was when Neoli brought up a name Camille had heard before in Carliston business circles: Julian Croswell. Julian was a billionaire real estate investor and restoration developer known for saving historic properties and funding women-led business programs across the South. Unlike Gavin, Julian had a reputation for restaurants, ethics, and unusual discretion. He avoided tabloids, he rarely gave interviews, he was wealthy in the old quit way, not the loud fragile way. Neoli's older brother worked for one of Julian's firms. When he heard pieces of Camille's situation through protected channels, he quickly arranged a meeting. Camille resisted at first. "I am not looking for rescue from another rich man." Neoli nodded. "Good. Then do not think of it that way. Think of it as someone powerful who fears men like Kevin." That turned out to be true. Julian met Camille in a private office above a renovated waterfront building he owned. He was in his early 40s, steady-eyed, and dressed simply for a man of his status. Nothing about him felt flashy. He did not try charm. He did not look at Camille with curiosity mixed with judgment the way man did when hearing a damaged woman's story. He simply listened. Camille told him enough for the context, but not every wound in detail. She explained the control, the isolation, the locked room, the hidden assets, and evidence. Julian was silent for a moment after she finished. Then he said, "Men like Gavin rely on two things, fear and reputation." Fear and reputation. Camille looked at him carefully. He continued, "Fear keeps the victim silent. Reputation keeps the public blind." Grant Holloway nodded from across the table. "Exactly." Julian leaned back slightly. Then the answer is not revenge truth to us. The answer is truth with precision. That sentence stayed with Camille because it matched the part of herself that was strongest now. She did not want destruction for the sake of destruction. She wanted justice. Julian offered practical help, a secure temporary residence through a foundation-owned townhouse, access to a forensic accounting team he trusted, professional introductions to restart Camille's design career when she was ready. No pressure, no strings, no personal expectations. Camille studied him with the caution of someone whose trust had been injured deeply. Julian noticed that said quickly, you do not owe gratitude for basic decency." That was the moment Camille believed he might truly be safe. Gavin strikes back. When Gavin realized Camille had truly left, he did not react with heartbreak. He reacted with rage, disguised as concern. He called mutual friends and said she was unstable. He told neighbors she had suffered exhaustion and needed privacy. He hinted to one local reporter that Camille was emotionally fragile and surrounded by manipulative influences during a difficult marital misunderstanding. Grant Holloway expected this. "It is standard," he told Camille. "He will try to shape the first story so he controls the narrative." Gavin also felt emotions that painted himself as the abandoned husband trying to protect marital assets from an impulsive wife. Camille read those documents with cold disbelief. He called her reckless. dependent, emotionally erratic. He described the marriage as loving but strained by her periods of withdrawal. It was like reading lies written with polished grammar. For one painful evening, Camille felt herself shrink again. Then Julian's forensic team found the first major crack: bank routing trails, layered transfers, property holdings connected to shell entities, and one deeply important truth: a substantial portion of funds moved by Gavin originated from assets legally tied to Camille's inheritance. Grant looked over the files and said, with rare satisfaction, "This changes the board." It did more than that. It transferred Camille from the woman Gavin wanted to portray as unstable into the co-owner and injured party in a pattern of possible financial deception. Still, Camille's emotional road remained hard. Legal truth did not erase fear overnight. Some mornings she still woke at small sounds. Sometimes she apologized unnecessarily when anyone knocked on the townhouse door. Sometimes she froze before opening curtains, as if light itself had to be earned again. Julian never rushed her. He met her occasionally to review case developments and career possibilities, always respectfully, always with space. One afternoon, he found Camille studying swatches and sketches in the townhouse dining room. "You still do that when stressed," he said. She looked up. "Design." He nodded. "My sister used to sketch floor plans on napkins during college finals." Camille gave the smallest smile. "It helps me think." Julian looked at the drawing. "They are good." For a moment she said nothing. Then she admitted, "I forget I was still good at anything." Julian's face softened. That is what controls does. It convinces capable people they were lucky to be tolerated. Camille looked at him with surprise. "You understand that well," he replied after a short pause. "My mother survived a man like Gavin." That explained something, not everything, but enough. The rise of Camille again. With Julian's introductions and her own talent, Camille slowly began rebuilding professional life. She consulted quickly on a boutique hotel's redesign project under partially confidentially, then a historic townhouse restoration. Her work was elegant, thoughtful, and deeply human. She used warm textures, natural light, and spaces that felt like relief after tension. Clients noticed, so did design publications. Camille Roman, the woman Gavin tried to keep invisible, began returning to the world through her own skill. That alone felt like victory. But the real turning point came when Grant and the forensic team finalized evidences showing Gavin had used forged authorizations and manipulated marital asset structures with simultaneously misrepresenting business liabilities. The case was no longer only ugly, it was dangerous for Gavin. Julian recommended a strategy. "Do not rush into the public drama," he said. "Let the truth become undeniable first." Camille nodded. "I want him exposed, not entertained." Julian almost smiled. "Good." Months passed. The divorce hearing intensified. Gavin tried charm in court, then calm victimhood, then controlled indignation. But unlike at home, he could not lock the room. He could not remove Camille's voice. He could not silence documents. Camille testified clearly, not theatrically, not bitterly, clearly. She described isolation, surveillance, economic control, the locked storage room, and the systematic removal of independence. She answered every question with measured honesty. The counter room listened. So did local media. Once feeling became accessible, Gavin's reputation began to crack in public. Men who once praised him at private dinners stopped appearing beside him in photos. Associates distanced themselves. One regional lender paused a major deal. A charity board quickly removed him pending review. Camly watched all this with a calm she did not expect. No screaming, no destruction, no dramatic confrontation in a grand hall. No dramatic confrontation in a grand hall, just the slow collapse of a false image under the weight of truth that was stronger than revenge fantasies ever were. Still, life had one more surprise for her. The billionaire becomes more than an ally. Throughout the legal battle, Julian stayed consistent. He never arrived with false promises. He never used Camly's vulnerability to position himself as a savior. He respected her work, her space, and her need for emotional space. That respect becomes more intimate than charm ever could. One evening after a successful presentation for a hotel restoration, Camly and Julian stood on a quiet balcony overlooking Charleston Harbor. The water reflected city lights. Spring air moved softly around them. Camly said, "I used to think powerful men were all dangerous in private." Julian looked out at the water for a moment. Some are dangerous because no one ever forced them to become accountable. She turned slightly toward him, and some, he met her gaze, some know power means responsibility. Silence settled warmly between them. Camly realized she felt safe near him, not dazzled, not dependent, safe. That mattered more. Over time, dinners followed meetings. Walks followed case updates. Conversations deepened. Julian told her about his mother's years of rebuilding after her own painful marriage. Camly told him about the girl she had been before Gavin, the designer, the dreamer, the woman who loved color and old homes and quit music. Julian once said, "I think she is coming back." Camly asked softly, "Who?" "The woman you were before survival became your full-time job." Those words touched her in a place still healing. Months later, when Julian finally took her hand for the first time, he did it slowly enough for her to choose not to pull away. She did not. For the first time in years, touch did not feel like control. It felt like peace. The fall of Gavin Rowan. By the second year of the proceeding, Gavin's life looked very different. Several business partners withdraw, and internal reviews exposed irregularities in his company's accounting. He was forced out of a prominent development project he once bragged about publicly. His social invitations faded, his legal expenses climbed. The image of the polished for years now looked like a cracked mask no one wanted to stand near. Then the court delivered the hardest blow. Camly was awarded a significant financial settlement tied not only to marital assets but also to wrongfully diverted inheritance-linked funds. Property rights were corrected. Gavin faced additional civil exposure connected to corporate irregularities. He did not go to the prison in this story, but something she happened. He lost status, leverage, and the illusion of invisibility. Sometimes invictibility. Sometimes that is punishment men like him fear most. One afternoon, months after the ruling, Camly saw Gavin unexpectedly outside the courthouse after a related feeling review. He looked thinner, less polished. The confidence in his posture had become brittle. He stepped toward her. Camly, she stood but did not move closer. He looked at her carefully, perhaps seeing for the first time that she no longer belonged to his emotional reach. "You destroyed everything," he said. Camly's expression did not change. "No," she answered calmly, "I rebuilt it." That sentence landed hard. Gavin gave a humorless laugh. "You think you won." Camly looked at him with the calm of a woman who had survived worse than his voice. This was never about winning. She said it was about getting my life back. He stared at her, searching for the frightened wife who once lowered her eyes under his gaze. She was gone. Julian's car waited at the curb a short distance away. Gavin noticed it. He recognized Julian immediately and bitterness crossed his face. So that is how you rebuilt, Gavin said. You found a richer man. Camille almost felt sorry for him then, because even now he still understood nothing. She answered quickly, "No, I found the truth about myself. He just met me after I did." Then she turned and walked away. That was the real revenge. Not pain, not humiliation, freedom. The life she built after the cage. Camille's design career grew beautifully after the case ended. She launched her own studio called Second Light Interiors. The name came from the feeling she carried after survival, the idea that life can brighten again after darkness if a person is brave enough to step toward it. Her work became known for restoring emotional warmth to damaged spaces. Boutique hotels, old homes, counseling centers, and women's retreat space out her vision. She designed rooms that felt safe, not because she had studied safety in books, because she had once lived without it. Julian remained beside her, never loudly, always steadily. The relationship grew at its own healthy pace. He never asked for the parts of her healing that were not ready to be shared. He celebrated her victories without trying to own them. He loved the woman she was becoming, not the wounded warrior he first met. That distinction mattered. 3 years after her escape, Camille stood in a newly restored historic building that now housed her flagship design studio on the first floor and a foundation-backed resource center upstairs for women rebuilding life after coercive marriage. Naomi stood beside her at the opening event, tears in her eyes. "You really did it," Naomi whispered. Camille smiled. "I really left." For her, that was beginning of everything. Not the court victory, not the headlines, not Julian. The first true victory was the night she stepped through the side gate and chose uncertainty over the captivity. That was courage. Everything else grew from that. The moral that lasted. People later told Camille's story sounded like revenge. The title sounded that way too. Locked away by a husband, escaped, found a billionaire to revenge. But Camille understood the truth more deeply. Real revenge is often imagined as destruction, a ruined man, a shattered life, a public downfall, but those things are incomplete. Because if the victim remains broken inside, no downfall truly heals anything. Emily's real revenge was this. She became visible again. She became financially independent again. She used truth, law, and dignity instead of choice. She built a life her husband could never control, and she learned that the greatest punishment for a controlling person is watching the person they tried to shrink become impossible to silence. So this was the story of Camille Roman, the woman who lived in a beautiful house that felt like a cage. A woman controlled by a husband who mistook power for love. A woman locked away, silenced and nearly erased, but she escaped. She found allies, she found truth, she found a billionaire who used power with decency instead of control. And in the end, she did not take revenge with cruelty, she took it with justice. She took it with independence, she took it by the rebuilding a life too strong to be caged again. The moral is simple and strong. A person who controls you does not love you. A beautiful house means nothing without freedom inside it. A lie can look powerful for years, but truth is stronger when it finally stands up. And the best revenge is not becoming cruel like the one who hurt you. The best revenge is healing, rising, and building a life they can never touch again. Thank you.